Hi, I'm Kevin and welcome to Ask a Stoic. Today's question is the third part of a three-part video series about spiritual exercises. We'll be looking at the third division of philosophy, ethics, and the corresponding disciplines that we can find there. The discipline here is the discipline of impulse, and it really incorporates several small parts. In many ways, ethics is the culmination of philosophy, and so much so that for latter Stoics, the Roman Stoics, they in many ways, at least based on the writings that have come down to us through the ages, discarded in many ways the first two and stuck solely with ethics. However, that was a change which probably was to the detriment of the school. The tripartite division of philosophy was really seen as three parts that were an interrelated whole that really couldn't be separated, like the yolk, white, and shell of an egg, that separately it's not as valuable or as perfect as it can be together. So ethics as is the culmination of philosophy in that it's how the changes we've been making find their way into the world. And we're trying to regulate our impulses. So through the discipline of desire and aversion, we have decided how we're going to make choices and choose things. And through logic, we have decided which impressions we're going to assent to. Now, all of these things build together to how we actually act in the world. Unless we're living in a cave or we've run off to the woods, our lives are in a social context to some extent or another. And ethics is how we interact with other folks and how our actions carry out into the world. So we can kind of divide that into choices and actions that we undertake, call them projects, and how we deal with other people. That's not a strict division that you see often, but I think it's a useful model for handling ethics. So the discipline of impulse, we might say choose our projects based on which are more conducive to our own virtue and which are conducive to the virtue of our communities. So that's really regulating which things we choose and deals with our internal choices in regards to that. Typically, ethics is solely commonly discussed as how we interact with other people, but it has this other component of the things that we choose to do. If we choose to do something in our free time which ends up being asocial or even antisocial, maybe that doesn't jive with an ethical outlook. So we really need to use two different spiritual exercises in this to determine which actions and projects we'll undertake. The one are our duties as rational creatures, as members of the human community, as members of the citizenry where we live, and our smaller local communities as well. We talked about oikeiosis before, and these three more than three, expanding circles of attention with the self at the center, and then family, and then local community, wider community, townsfolk, citizenry, all rational creatures. And as such, we have certain duties that are incumbent upon us. Using the previous processes, we can determine what those duties are. It might be as simple as not infringing upon other folks' freedom. That might be a duty that we have as people. We might have a duty to devote some of our time to private charity. We might have a duty to look after certain parts of our community. We might have a duty to protect others who are rightly under our protection. So our duties, which is not necessarily a common or at least well thought of term these days, can be a benchmark for our activities in a social context. I don't think it's right or just for me to lay out what I think all of the duties for a philosopher are. I think that's an incredibly personal decision that people have to work through. And the duties that I feel through my experiences and my rational process, you might not have, or you may have duties that I will never have. That I just don't think it's necessarily a one-size-fits-all. There's probably significant overlap, but I think that's really a personal process we all have to go through. And the second is acting according to value. So as we're choosing those projects and those activities in life which contribute to an environment which is conducive for virtue. So choosing, based on our previous disciplines, choosing how we spend our free time, how we spend our discussions with others, and really acting according to our highest and best values more often than in our philosophical journaling or our discussions with other philosophers. We don't necessarily have to preach to others. Our actions should in many ways do that for us. Our study of philosophy should change the way that we interact with people, not in a heavy-handed, beat over the head sort of way, but people should be able to look at us and say, hey, there's something I'd like to emulate, or hey, that person's really doing well, doing good for others. So acting according to value allows us to select which projects and engagements we engage in. So I hope that's given you some food for thought. If you have any further questions, you can ask them below in the comment, or you can go to mountainstoic.wordpress.com. On the left, click Ask a Stoic, use the form, and submit your own questions. Thanks for watching, and fate permitting, I'll see you next time.